Hello, everyone. My name is Brent Frain. Today, we're going to be talking about accessibility, Ontario Disability Act. What is it all about? Well, you know what? Stay tuned. Why? Because the show starts now. Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to PWD Allies podcast. I have, I have a really great guest, and I haven't really been able to have this guest on since the relaunch of PWD Allies podcast onto YouTube here. Maddy Dever, welcome. Welcome to our new rebroadcast of the show.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you, Brent.
you were an old favorite on on the other on Brent's other
Uh,
Twitter Spaces. Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah, the Twitter Spaces. Yes, it
yeah,
was. I enjoyed participating in those, and it's always active and lively debate.
yeah.
Oh yes, oh most definitely. And here it's just a different kind of a layout, and we've really grown a lot since the relaunch, and just tweaking a few things here and there. So people listening in on the show today, we're doing a new intro, just a kind of little teaser for you, and just kind of stay tuned to how the show goes. And so I hope that everyone loves the new intro that we're doing, and having Maddy joining us on today and talking about the Accessibility Ontario Disability Act. Maddy, what is that? Like, what's the meaning behind it?
Sure. So, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act, which I'll just call AODA from this point onwards,
Yeah.
was a groundbreaking act that was in 2005 that set a goal to make Ontario barrier free by January 1st, 2025. So that's 41 days from now, and we're all excited that that everything's going to be barrier free, except it won't. So the purpose of the act is basically to come up with standards starting with the government offices, and then larger businesses, and then smaller businesses, in ways that they need to interact with people with disabilities, whether it's in customer service, whether it's information and communication, employment standards, transportation, and the design of public spaces. And there was a lot of work in the first 10 years in terms of what needed to get done. And understanding what needed to get done was the first part, and then starting to make the standards and have deadlines for organizations to be able to show that they'll meet the standards. A lot of really good ideas that we've seen the Accessible Canada Act take some of the ideas and look at a federal lens for that, but it's sort of stalled in terms of implementation, in terms of having standards that keeping the standards up and applying to everybody. And so we're now 41 days out, and we're wondering what do we need to do to make the AOD the barrier, the thing that's going to actually create the barrier for Ontario that we really need. What does it need other than more time? And what are some of the things that we've learned from the last 20 years that we can implement going forward?
Oh, absolutely. And there's so much lived experience stories to teach, to teach the society of what we really need going forward with it, on building a very awesome barrier-free society for inclusion of every disabled person in Canada.
Yeah, what it's I heard about the AODA when it came out because there's an election shortly thereafter, and I always worked for Elections Ontario on election day. 'Cause I since I was a little kid, elections were one of my favorite things to
Mm.
be part of. And it was the first time that I was trained on the AODA, because as a government agency, they're required to ensure that all of their employees and workers knew how to serve customers of varying disabilities. So it was an eye opener and it was something because I didn't have the same amount of disabilities then that I have now. The world changes quickly.
Yep.
Um, but it was I really appreciated that um, that some things that some businesses and some organizations and some government entities may have done uh, were actually being codified. We're actually being trained consistently, so that at least from a customer service perspective, we could see a difference. And um, there's there's a lot more in other areas that are challenging, but at least that customer service standard, I think it was one of the first ones put out, has made a difference. Um, at least in terms of supporting people. But we know that it doesn't apply to everyone.
Hmm.
Right? We started with government organizations, and we started with big businesses, and then there's some things that apply to small businesses, but the varying level of what standard they have to adhere to is significantly different. And
Hmm.
a lot of it, one of the things that those of us in Ontario have talked about, using the number of employees as the basis for the level of service to customers makes no sense. Like if you have 5 employees, well, you're held to a lower standard than if you had 20 employees. But if you're both serving 1,000 people,
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
service to that 1,000 people that's important,
Yeah.
not to the employees. Like where I do find that we've done a lot of really good work is this customer service to the larger place. But the other place where it does have a lot of support is um, in the employment standard. How to accommodate the requirement to accommodate employees, and how and to what level. Those things are really much more baked in, and they're supported by other legislation. Things like the Worker Safety Board, the health standards. There's a lot of other things outside of the AODA that really ensures that we're treating and supporting people with disabilities at work
Hmm.
much better. But that's there's a smaller percentage of people that, sorry, let's flip it this way. People with disabilities have a higher unemployment rate than people without disabilities. So there it affects a much smaller number of people than the experiences that people with disability have in the other areas.
Hmm.
Like simply, in Ontario, for example, taxis. So if a municipality licenses taxis, then um, an operator cannot charge more for a trip for somebody with mobility devices than a regular thing. But it doesn't require accessible taxis.
Oh, interesting.
And so where I live in Lanark County, we have many like there's 4 sort of towns inside of it. Several different each town has their own taxi company, not one accessible taxi.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
wow.
And
Yeah.
so that's a real challenge for people if they want to be able to get out and about. There's medical transportation is covered if you're on ODSP. So
Uh,
we do have a medical transportation organization, but we don't have regular taxis. So
Mm.
it's little things like this that um, are the things that we were hoping we would see these last 10 years move towards making their like if the idea is to be barrier free, then you need to look at all barriers.
Yeah, and actually that's what I wanted to get to. I mean, you've mentioned barrier free a few times now, and you've mentioned accessibility, and there's other terms too, like we talk about adequate income and all those, right?
Mhm.
Those are all
Yeah.
definitions, and I think you know, for whatever reason, governments get tripped up on definitions like what does barrier free mean? And
Yeah.
what does accessibility mean? And what does adequate income mean? Like, I mean, if you have a
Yeah.
different definition,
Yeah.
like it doesn't, I mean, it really, you have to nail down the definition first
Yeah.
before you, you know?
And
Yeah.
there's a difference in there's a difference in definition between accessibility and accommodation. Accessibility means that it should mean that we can do what other able-bodied people can do in the same fashion that they do it. That doesn't mean the exact same way, but in the same fashion. Accommodation is can bring you accessibility, but if accommodate you can accommodate somebody in a different way, in a different means than somebody. That's not accessibility. For example, if the accessible door is at the back of a building where the garbage is, that's an accommodation, but it's not real true accessibility. We're not able to do the same thing in the same way, even if it does mean that we there is a way to get in. And it's you hear that a lot, that particular issue where the doors are significantly further away than the main doors in older buildings. And I it's at some point, this is something I say in my local town, which has been around for 200 years. At some point, it's 2025, 20, 2024. I was talking about
Almost.
2025 in my
Well,
brain.
almost
Yeah,
2025.
almost in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
rounded up, we're in 2025.
Yeah.
You know, okay, I threw
Welcome to
myself.
the future.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fast forward.
The future is both now and then. Um, it's what was I saying? So I threw myself by saying 2025.
Sorry.
Uh,
um okay, so the front doors. So we know that it's always more expensive and a larger challenge to make something accessible the older something is, right? When you hopefully all new things and all new businesses should start with accessibility, start with inclusion, and it's the costs are tiny when you're doing it from the start than it is when you're retrofitting something. But there are ways of doing things, and at some point we need to say that accessibility, human rights trumps heritage. We're not saying that heritage isn't important, but it can't trump a human right. And there's so many this is where I think the biggest reason why businesses don't uh, do these things to make things more accessible is they think that the cost is going to be high and they're not required to. So you either make things required, so the cost is going to have to be built into the way they do business, or they have to realize that it doesn't cost as much and that you find a way of doing it that way. We know that when you do an accommodation for, let's say, one person, right? One month, you put a button on a door, you are actually creating accessibility for like a lot larger pool of people.
mhm.
And businesses, the I look in my town, there's about 20% of the businesses in town that I can actually get into. There's probably another 10% of businesses that there can be a way found to sort of get me in or at least get me served. But all of the rest of them, I have no ability to. But I really, 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 um, uh, I'm very loyal to those businesses that I can do business with, and it's it's something that I look in those businesses that are being more successful are the ones that have the ramps, that have more space inside of a building, that make sure that
Yeah.
they have accessible bathrooms. um, and this, I'm just talking mobility. There's so many other
Mhm.
different accessibility needs when it comes to low vision and blind and with hard hearing. There's so many more things that we need to think about, but we need businesses to buy into it. So they need to be incentivized, required, or they need to be shown the business case of that the little bit that you do will really it does um bring back a return on investment.
Mhm.
I have a really quick little story that's kind of cool. This is going back quite a ways. My first wife was in a wheelchair, a motorized wheelchair, and we went out. We were wanting to go to this restaurant, and I think we were just out downtown somewhere, and we saw this really cool restaurant. It was one of those things like, "Hey, I want to go there," but then we realized there was no way for her wheelchair to get in. There was no ramp, and the owners were immediately like so apologetic, like right away. They're like, "Oh wow, like we never really, I mean, it was an older building too, same thing. But they said we never really thought about accommodating for that. But they were super apologetic, and they said, "Can you help us like with an idea of
Mhm.
how to make a ramp?" And we said, well, there's actually portable steel ramps that you can
Mhm.
just affix to like one stair things or two stair things. And they're like, wow. And so um, they went out and got one because we told them about these things, and they're like, they got one right away. And then we were able to come back and eat there, and they're like, thank you again so much for letting us know about these
Yeah.
ramps. So it was really great, really,
Well,
really great.
there was a time I'll just kind of add on to that too, and I can just provide the information to our listeners and our viewers that there was a restaurant I worked at. I mean, this is going back decades now. Wow, time flies in the time machine. But I was able to convince an employer one time to basically make a monitor, and I was making orders in a fast food restaurant, and so I was in the kitchen and I was making orders, but I couldn't see the monitor. Like the font was too tiny. And so they got
Hmm.
doing other stuff in there because I couldn't keep up with it. I tried and I said, I can't read that. Like it's like, okay. So I said, well, I was talking to a government agency at the time. And so I said, well, I'm struggling. I can't do the job, this part of the job. And the employer is frustrated with me. They said, okay, have they thought about applying for adaptive equipment? Is like a there are CCT monitors, but they basically blow up the screen so that basically would make the font a lot larger, and they could adjust it, and it would cost them like hang on, it was $7,000. It was state of the art. They basically had to synchronize it all throughout the whole kitchen, and because they're all kind of interconnected, so if one would have it,
Hmm.
it would all be that way. And the employers said the same thing. Wow, it's just too expensive.
Hmm.
So I said, well, I mean, back then, I mean, for myself, I think it would benefit me, and it would also benefit every other employee who's not disabled, who will now benefit it down the road because maybe they have trouble reading, from a far distance, and they could actually be further back, and they could actually read it and do other tasks. And so it worked out well for everybody. And so I really was like, gave myself a pat on the shoulder because the employer actually said, this is a great idea, a great investment, and it's going to benefit everybody going forward. And so
Yeah.
they thanked me, and yeah, and so I was able to actually make these orders. So I'm just like bang, 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 reading this stuff, and they're like, wow, this guy is awesome, right? So yeah, that's my
And
story.
And the other small little thing we should mention too, that doesn't get, I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but um, is we have to say that people with disabilities have higher retention numbers than people without disabilities. So once you hire somebody with a disability, like, there might be a little bit, we're talking about upfront costs for making a space more accessible or but once you have an employee with a disability, their want and desire to stay
Hmm.
uh, at a place is much higher than somebody without the disability, right?
Yeah, Neil, that was
Yeah.
actually true of VRS, by the way, who I had gone
Hmm.
through. Yeah,
Hmm.
and they actually were the ones who actually helped the employer with the funding on that. So
Yeah.
it was like I was so great that I was able to get that going for for the company, and I wish other companies would actually start kind of picking up on that and actually
Yeah.
looking at what adaptive equipment can they make things that the tools can they make things better for people with disabilities or any mobility not like just to get around. Like, I mean, make
Yeah.
ramps that make things so there's a door edge where you can't get up properly on it. There's
Yeah.
maybe one step with this little ramp to make it better. Not push them along, but make them so that they can actually do it themselves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The four key pieces of accessibility, at least from a mobility perspective, is we need to be able to get to a place, get in a place, get around a place, and pee in a place in the right place.
Yeah.
And accessible, a place isn't really fully accessible unless it's got all the things. So that means that once we're in, we do need to be able to move around. We need to be able to get to the cache and actually, reach to the interact machine. And some of it's I I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of retailers about this. Um, when I go to a place and they have a cutout underneath the cache where I sort of can roll to, so I'm like right at the same level I would be if I was standing.
Mhm.
I love those places. I am I am tickled pink that I get my basic needs met. It's
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
sad thing, but um so when I go then around to other places that don't have that, and I experience the challenge every single time I'm in there. Like I got in. They have a nice little opening door that I don't even have to touch a button. Wow, I can move around and get the things I want to buy, but then I have a challenge every single time I want to go to pay for the thing.
Mm.
It's I think like this is where I think that there's I said there's five standards with the AODA, but there's never just one standard that an organization needs to meet. So we started with customer service standard, and I think that for the most part, people are are comfortable and appropriately support those with disabilities that they are aware of. I think that the attitude about of customer service has improved a lot, even over the 20 years that the AODA has been in place. But design of public spaces is a
Mm.
challenge where um, we either can't get in or we can't get around, and it's just simple things like the cache is not having a place where you can get to, the interact machines being far and immovable, so that you have to be access to that at a particular thing. Bathrooms that don't have the buttons, or that have, okay, my one of my big pet peeves is the accessibility symbol is put on way too many things that don't actually mean anything.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know how many bathrooms I've gone into that have not been accessible in any way. There's no buttons, so I have to find a way with my hands, which is really challenging to get in. I can't get around very easily without bumping into things. There's the stall. The accessible stall maybe is like an inch wider than the other one, so you can't
Oh.
actually get in. And I can't get to the sinks. I maybe I can get to the water, but I can't get to the soap. And they have garbage cans. I have been in some horrible, a lot of the cases, hotel bathrooms that again they have that little symbol on it, so it makes me feel like, okay.
Mm.
Um, it's I don't think that it's clear enough to these businesses what's required by accessibility beyond that front door.
Mhm.
Which also, if the accessible button breaks, never a priority to get fixed.
No, I
Yeah.
know.
It's like there's a Burger King in our town. Yes, I will slam them because I've been asking for 4 years, 3 years for them to fix. One of the button works once you get in. You can't get in, and it's a really
Oh.
heavy door, especially in the wind. It, 3 years, 3 years, and I've made it comments all the time, but it goes nowhere. Other places, I don't go there often.
Mhm.
I just experienced this today because I really, really needed some fries. And
Yeah.
it's the
I'm glad
closest
that
thing that's open. But
I'm
it's
glad
like
that I'm glad, Maddie, that you mentioned it was Burger King, because that's the company that actually I was able to get the monitor actually put up there to actually
Mm.
making burgers, right? And
Yeah.
chicken burgers and Whoppers, and and yeah, like again about the accessibility sign, they had one on there, but they didn't work on the door.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like wow, you can put the monitors on, but you can't fix the door for the washrooms to make it more inclusive for people.
Yeah.
Like
So
wow.
there's accessibility to meet a standard, but one of the things that I hear all of the time, especially by municipalities when it comes to winter clearing of roads and sidewalks, um, we meet the minimum standard, we meet the legal requirement, but when these legal requirements are lower than our basic needs requirements, like our basic needs isn't a ceiling, it's a floor, and it's under the floor. I get really frustrated, and it's not enough just to have a button. It's not enough just to have a washroom that's you can get around. It every business in Ontario is required every 3 years to update their accessibility plan. But it's not about when they're going to be more accessible. It's just describing what they're doing now. There needs to be, I was looking this up today. 10 years ago, in 2015, we had Ontario's Accessibility Action Plan, which really laid out what the 10 years to when AOD was supposed to be when barrier free.
Mhm.
Um, we it laid out a lot of the direction that we needed to go to be able to get there. We haven't really followed that in the last 6 years. There's been We did have a government change, but I don't think that the previous government was doing enough either to make sure that we were going to meet this thing. I don't
Prior.
know about you guys, but there are not too many governments across this country of any political color that really does a good job in ensuring that our needs and our rights are met.
Yeah,
It's a lot of lip service, a lot of talking about talking.
Talk is good,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, action
Well,
needs a
yeah,
result.
yeah,
that's another thing that I wanted to get to is when you talk about accessibility or even discrimination, I've said this lots of times on the podcast. I mean, Brent can verify
Mhm.
is like usually when like governments will say, well, if you can't get access to a playground, that's discriminatory, or if you can't use a ramp, that's discriminatory. But they don't you never hear them talk about systemic
yeah,
attitudinal things,
Right.
right? It's
That's
yeah,
it's
huge.
it's all about let's just build the ramp or let's make sure there's an elevator built and
yeah,
they don't really address the attitudinal systemic problems, right? There's so much of
yeah.
that. There's so much
Well,
of
The
that.
yeah, but here's also another thing too. One of my pet peeves is when you have a transit bus pulls up to the curb, and so they'll pull the front door up to the curb, but the back door is way off the curb. So if you're closer to the back door and you want to get off, well, you have to really hold on to those bars and really watch your step because
yeah.
yeah, down
Say
you
say a
go.
little say a little prayer before you
Yeah,
disembark. Yeah.
I mean, I've had to
There
on
are a lot
my
of issues with transit, especially paratransit. I think,
Hmm.
I mean, we consider we a lot of us consider that paratransit is a disaster in Ontario.
Hmm.
It's really the feeling we get again, and it's an attitude thing, is that we should just be happy with what services they're able to give us. Not that like you one of the things I find and dealing with governments for most of my life now
Hmm.
is that you show your priorities where you put your money.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And if what are the things that get cut first? Paratransit services, disability, special education, all this stuff, or it's not given the priority when other things are. Um, attitude is the first domino of a whole whack of barrier dominoes that we have. but you take that first, you hit that, you remove that first domino, you break through that attitude barrier.
Mhm.
Every other barrier behind it is easier to fix. And
Yep.
it's what I want to build a world. What I really want to see is as a world where a culture of accommodation, where we're looking like, what can I do to help you? What needs to be done to fix this? What's the ideal? And instead of it being a vision board thing, it's an action. You know, it's not just what do you need to do, it's what do you need to do and let's go do it. Um, which is that's a real challenge for people with disabilities to do themselves. To like we can tell you what we need, but we can't make you change things. We really need to build allies, especially allies that have they're at tables that have influence to, you know, hear the challenges and find the ways and the people to hold accountable to fix it. So many times the solutions are easy, but the status quo is so warm and comfy.
Yeah.
People don't like people in government tend to not want to rock the boat because they don't know if the boat will be there if they rock it too much.
Well, I know that I
Well, yeah.
know the focus today is Ontario, and you know that both me and Brent are in BC here, and I
Mhm.
just wanted to do a callback, Brent, to Rich Coleman. You and I both remember who Rich Coleman is. He was the BC Liberal MLA,
Yeah.
and
He was
it was
minister in charge for housing.
yeah, and it was back in 2015, and this is where I had my 15 minutes or 15 seconds of fame or whatever, because I was on the global BC newscast,
Mhm.
and because there was one time that Rich Coleman stood up in the legislature, the BC legislature, and he said that people on disabilities here in BC should be grateful that they're not people in Nicaragua, like a third world country. They should be
Oh, right.
grateful. Remember that he mentioned Nicaragua, a third world country. So he said, you know, just imagine you could be living in Nicaragua, and so now you should be grateful that you're not, and that was his comment. And I got so mad
Me too.
Mhm.
that I wrote a letter, and somehow it wasn't even a letter to like media, but somehow media caught wind of it. I think I put it on the BC Disability Caucus page, and then somebody from the media picked it up and they said, well, we got to get you on camera, because I was just so annoyed. But I mean, that's the
Yeah,
same thing, right? We're talking about
yeah,
attitude. It's
yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
it's that narrative, right? They just keep
yeah,
spinning the narrative and say copy paste, copy paste. They don't
Mhm.
want to change the
yeah,
status quo, and it's easier for them just to kind of go with that same narrative. And yeah,
yeah. The federal government is signed on to the Convention of the Rights of People with Disabilities.
yes.
And have there been some positive things? Yes. Have there been other things that we find really distressing? And I think you'd probably feel the same way about the paltry amount of the the Canada Disability Benefit.
Yeah.
But there's limited things that our Constitution allows our federal government to do, and we have the provinces that are responsible for all of the things that affect our lives with people with disabilities,
Mhm.
with the exception of employment, which is a sort of a shared sort of beast. It's frustrating that the provinces aren't required to be signatories to what the federal government has signed on for all of us. And we see again and again the responsibility, the way the Constitution has separated these things makes it difficult to have big programs that can solve the wider issues. Um,
100%. 100%.
and
Absolutely.
we have provincial governments that the moment the feds say even sort of talk about sort of entering the sphere, it's either hey, stay away, or oh, you're going to give us money, we'll just wait for that. And
Yeah,
um,
it's like in BC, they're saying, well, okay, let's just wait until July of next year of 2025 because we're going to wait on the
yeah,
PDB. Well, we know it's all
yeah,
completely buggered right up. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, that's
This
like
is
yeah,
this is
well,
one
we'll
of those areas where like the a large percentage of people in the country believe that people with disabilities should be brought out of poverty. There is a widespread agreement on that. The 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 how, like one of the things I find is that there's, I think people have this intellectual belief that they want to support people with disabilities until it affects them.
Mhm.
And then it's a much harder thing. So whether you're in government or you're in business, the attitudes that we fall back on, which we've talked about, the attitude barriers really block it. So governments, like as a whole, are the same way when there's, if there's the possibility of money coming from another place,
Mhm.
they'll wait on it rather than looking at the individuals. And human rights are it is so frustrating to be so um needing the support of others to survive,
Yep.
and finding that even the most basic things are a fight. I in the wintertime, let's see, I'm in a motorized wheelchair. In the wintertime, I in order for my mental health to be um in sync, to my wellness to be good overall, I need to be able to get out. So I promise myself that every day that I can, I will. And I acknowledge that for every 10 centimeters of snow we get, there's one day that I can't go out. That's just the same thing for anybody that's not in a car that has
Yeah.
massive snow tires. Um, but I really, I believe that if people can walk on a sidewalk, I should be able to roll on a sidewalk.
Mhm. Well,
Again, within reason of the snow, but um it does not seem to be that priority to municipal governments.
mhm.
It doesn't really require much. I just need to be, if for me to use a sidewalk, I just need to make sure that the curb cuts are all cleared,
Yeah.
and that they, they that yeah, for the most part, that's all I need to worry about. I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes I
and
get stuck in the middle
salted
of it.
salted down too.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it's
exactly. Yeah,
lighting. It's like no.
What one of
yeah.
my one of my
It needs
pet
to
peeves
be cleared.
one of my pet peeves is when they take the snow and they pile it up in a
Oh,
accessibility stall.
right.
You know,
Oh,
Yes.
you see that all the time too.
Yeah.
I just wanted to call back go back a little bit to because
Sure.
I thought you just hit the nail on the head earlier when you were talking about, you know, I think not enough people realize that the disability file or disability income support is 100% responsibility of provinces. It's 100%. It's
Yeah.
always been that way. It's always been
Yeah.
100% the responsibility of the provinces. So it behooves me as to why, like here in BC again, we have a provincial government here that says, well, we're waiting on the feds. We're going to wait to see what the feds
Yeah.
do with the Canada's disability benefit.
It,
Well,
yeah.
the fact is the disability file for income support has always fallen on provincial governments. Always,
Yeah.
they wanted it, they have it, and
Yeah.
they're dropping the ball, and then they're saying, "Oh, it's your fault."
yeah.
Yeah. So
You know,
in 2000, the poverty level was 2,200. We got $2,000 as the emergency, the CERB, the emergency
Yeah.
response benefit that that almost no people with disabilities actually were eligible for if they were on assistance. Because and our assistance levels individually across the country is a little bit different between 900 and 1,500, 1,600. I think there's only one province in the whole country. The disability payment is at or slightly above poverty level. In most cases,
To be able
it's somewhere about 60%, between 60 and 80% from it. And okay, that's the poverty line, right? Disability, the cost for people in disability
much
to
higher.
in order to be healthy are higher, right? And so we're looking at a floor and not and we're thinking it's a ceiling.
Yeah.
And we're not even able to even see the ceiling from where we are right now. This is where it's really challenging. And I think as much as it was a great idea that the feds had to do this disability benefit top up, it was supposed to be a top up to
Mhm.
ensure that everybody was at or above the poverty line. But the provinces who have never seen I haven't heard any government official. I'm not talking about party politicians because
Yeah.
unless they're in power, what they're saying is just,
Yeah.
um, words. I haven't seen any government official in any province state that they believe that government is responsible to have people out of poverty, with the exception of the liberals who ended up not doing it. But in terms of any province, no one has taken the position that they should fund us at or above the poverty level. The attitude is in a lot of cases, we're giving you enough, come on, or hey, if you work, you'll get more. And in
Yeah.
Ontario, the attitude that the premier and his cabinet have said over the last 6 years is the best social assistance is a job. And
Oh,
they've
yeah.
done a lot of work to make it better for people on a DSP who work. For the 25% that are able to do some work, they have made them much better off, but still not above poverty, but still, much, much better off. It's the 75% that can't need the support. We, it, it's that fundamental belief that this is social assistance,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
We call it in Ontario the Ontario Disability Support Program.
Mhm.
It it's not. It doesn't support. All it does is give us some money. It has very few services that actually support us. We're not covered for any of the para treatments like physio or whatnot that might actually help us work more or better or actually at all. It's just looks at us as like it's social. Here's social assistance that doesn't pay enough for you to rent. It doesn't pay enough for all the food and everything else you need. But hey, my God, we're giving you something.
Yeah.
But don't you dare even think of skirting any of the rules because we'll hold you back and we'll take it away and you'll get nothing. And it's an attitude like
Yeah.
that prevailing attitude is the thing that we need to. I really wish that you know if the federal government was really seeing this as a priority, that they would bring all the ministers that have anything to do with disability and all the provinces together and have a summit and say, hey, we
Yeah.
need to mash this out. We did this 50 years ago for the Canada Health Act. This is another thing that we need to do, and we need to figure out like we're going to promise you some money so that's like
Yeah.
there's carrots in front of you, but you also need to take responsibility of the areas of your responsibility. We have to have this attitude that we must support people with disabilities. We must accommodate them, and if they're unable to work, they must provide them the basic income that they need to live. It's an attitude thing, and I'm hopeful that we'll find a way of doing this. Like I'm. It's a lot easier for me to see to fight and fix and change systems than it is to
Well,
deal with my own
Well,
my own challenges.
yeah,
But
like the way that
it's
the way that I see like in BC, it's the same kind of thing there where BC copies a lot of the policies that Ontario has back and forth. They kind of look at jurisdictional, and
yeah,
we had a basic income pilot project way back in 2017 where we had a confidence and supply agreement with the BC Green Party.
yeah,
Now when the I guess when the Wine government got into was in government in Ontario, and Doug Ford took over, the agreement
yeah,
was to keep the pilot project going, and he said,
yeah,
"Yep." And
yep,
of course, the BC government was watching that at the time, and so I was very intrigued at the time watching this, and I'm thinking, this would be interesting. And I started hearing stories of how it really changed a person's their well being.
yeah,
A person was able to go to university; they were able to get maybe 6 months worth of rent put aside. In many cases, they were able to buy nutritional food because they couldn't qualify for the supplements under ODSP. So they were able to really take care of themselves in a lot of positive ways. And then Doug Ford scrapped it, pulled the plug.
Yeah.
One of his ministers said it wasn't working. Well, it wasn't working because you didn't give it a chance. So BC at the same time looked at that and went, oh, well, it's not working in Ontario.
Yeah.
I guess we better, pull the plug here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. The cabinet minister that pulled the plug is a friend of mine, and at the time is one of the I really was frustrated with her, and I told her that because it was like there hadn't been enough time. The problem is like we were seeing successes. We are seeing the mental health of those people improve significantly.
Oh yeah.
Once it got taken away, there was a tailspin. There was a negative effect. So canceling this before it ended was supposed to end, turned a bright light into a dark chasm, and it's really a shame that happened. And here's the thing: the argument for basic income really comes down to this. If somebody has an income in order to pay rent, so they get adequate housing, then they're able to they're better able to get employment because their housing is stable. They have access to more nutritious food, so their physical health will improve. And when all of those things work together, social inclusion is possible. Your mental health is it will improve.
Yeah.
When you take the costs of all of those not working, you know, add that up together, it's far less than having a basic income, or especially for people with disabilities.
Well, we haven't even addressed the elephant in the room, and actually we have Minnie on cam is in chat, and she's talking about I think it's Leslie Institute has said that the cost of having a disability is up to 40% higher than somebody that doesn't have a disability. So there's that crip tax, we call the crip tax of like double it and add a zero, and
it's ever increasing. Like it's the longer you go without all your basic needs met, the effect of your physical health and your mental health are increased. You get one condition, which begets another condition, then you have hospital stays, which beget hospital stays, which begets long-term care, which is more expensive than paying somebody's, giving people enough rent to have something adequate.
It costs more to keep people in poverty than to get them out of poverty.
Yeah.
I wanted your view, Maddy, on something that we've talked a few times on the show about, but just your viewpoint about a person with disability. They're either born with a disability or they've acquired a disability further in life, or multiple disabilities. Now, so a person is medically assessed and designated in their province that they live in. They're a resident in their province, but they're a citizen of Canada. So jurisdictional, do you think that, you may know the answer to this, I don't know, but your viewpoint, do you think that they should be able to go and apply at another province for disability status, or take their file automatically transferable onto another province? So maybe they have a work opportunity or in another province, or maybe they have a relative in another province they need to go and stay with for quite some time, rather than applying and wasting taxpayers' dollars on doctors' waste of their time, medical forms be reassessed, because your disability doesn't go away.
We're all Canadians, and I think just like when your health card is transferable wherever you go, right? And the same things available in one province are available in all provinces. That's what universal means, is that it's available universally. Not that universal means everything is covered everywhere. It means that the things that are covered are universally covered no matter what your postcode is. So we have the Canada Health Act has a very defined list of things that every province must cover, and it's anything that's done in a hospital, and and to the same extent in a medical clinic.
Mhm.
So anything that's not isn't covered, which is why somehow we've pieced apart the human body in that your eyes are different, but some of it's covered, but some like fixing your eyes and whatnot, glasses aren't covered.
Mhm.
Your teeth totally different. Your jaw again not covered. Your ears, yes. Your body from head to toe, great. To improve your body, no. So things like physio and massage and all those things not covered. Your mental health is not your body. So your mind, like if it's your brain, yes. If it's your mind, no,
Yeah.
ish, depending. Um, so
Yeah.
we
Mind
we
over
we
matter.
yeah, so we
Yeah.
exactly. So we have all of these parts that like people wonder, like, but why can't we just add, drugs to it? Why can't we add pharmaceuticals? Why can't we add dental? Like the thing is, we can, but it really requires all 10 provinces and 3 territories and the federal government to agree. We came to that point 50, 60 years ago with the Canada Health Act to improve it, to change one letter in it requires the approval of 10 provinces and 3 territories.
Yeah.
So, do I feel that this is the right thing? No, this is our, as I said earlier, our Constitution is failing people with disabilities. We really need to move to, we're one Canadian, we're citizens or we're residents of Canada.
Right.
We happen to live in different provinces,
Yeah.
but I think that we really need to find more ways of of making the, we have the right to move to anywhere in this country, and everything should be similar, knowing that like certain things are going to be like different, but the major things
Yeah.
that we expect as Canadians should be covered. Yeah, there needs to, but that's what I'm saying. Like, if the federal government was really serious about this, they'd convene a summit, and we would look at what is it going to take, so that the people with disabilities in Canada have a good quality of life and can thrive. What will it take? Right? What do we need to do federally? What do the provinces need to do? How do what are the what? So we have a document and a plan for the next 50 years. The Canada Disability Benefit was supposed to be something like this. It's not. There's other things that are different strategies that the federal government has put on for different things. It's limited in terms of the government. The federal government is limited what it can do. It can influence, it can advise, it can
Yeah.
incentivize, but it cannot force, it cannot do, because most of the things that affect us day to day in our lives are provincial in nature. So this is one of the things that I think more and more we're finding we really need. The provinces, I think if the provinces were guaranteed that they could still have control of how they do it, but they'd agree on what they're doing, I think that we could see, especially if money's offered. I know from being on a couple Ontario government panels and committees over the last few years that the province won't do a damn thing unless money's given to them first. You put a carrot in
Yeah.
front of them, they'll do that.
Yeah.
They're
Pickle.
not part of many national programs because, or the last one to sign into it, because until they see the money, they're not going to
Yeah.
do the effort because they have a lot of other priorities, and the priorities aren't with this government, and even the previous liberal government. I would say the same thing. It's like I look at politics. There's 2 lines. There's you're either people focused or you're economy focused. The reality is you need to be in the middle of it. You need the economy doesn't run well if people aren't being supported, and this people aren't supported if the economy is doing shit. So there needs to be this pull to the center of that. But the only way in our current constitutional system is to get all the parties together. So this is the time.
Universal. Yeah.
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 Well, everybody knows that I like my metaphors, so I'm gonna end on a metaphor again, and that's I we're talking about the push pull of provinces versus federal government, right? And that's a huge thing because what I think the our income assistance programs need to be across the whole country. Yes, they do need to be run by the provinces, but what should happen is it should be run like a McDonald's or we were talking about Burger King earlier, where no matter which Burger King you go to, you're always going to get the same Whopper. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you could go into like 200 different Burger Kings and you're always going to end up with the same Whopper.
At
It
least we
should be
hope so.
it should be the same thing for all of the provinces. Like if you want income assistance, here's the program for income assistance, and you
Yeah.
have like
Universal Red
it's
Cross.
the same across all provinces. Like
Yeah.
why they can't do that, I don't know. They should.
I mean, like having like one platform, but then
Yeah, one basic platform for all the provinces and
Yeah.
just have
inter
them
Yeah.
deliver it. Yeah.
interprovincial right across, but having
Yeah.
a platform in
Yeah.
every
Well,
province.
just like the Health Act, right? The
Yeah.
Health Act requires the provinces to do, this list of services that they will not bill people individually for, right? So and the federal government then provides money and funds a good portion of that. Um, it's got to be the same thing for the other aspects of our lives, especially disability, even social assistance. Like there's certain things that, to be honest, the bigger the pot of people, the bigger pot of funds, the more streamlined and efficient it can be. It's actually less efficient to have multiple systems. I look in Ontario at our school boards. We have 72 different school boards doing things 72 different ways. It's a
Oh my.
mess. And because of the way it's structured, you can't the province can't force school boards to do anything other than not run a deficit. And when it comes to racism, those two cases, they can close all schools, but not individual schools.
Oh
Wow.
You
my
can't.
God.
Yeah, it's so there's things that when you come up with a set of things, the bigger the pot of people you're doing it, or funding it, like, honestly, I'm just close to Ottawa, so we have the whole Ottawa Gatineau Ontario connecting. So people, especially people that work in the federal government, they may end up sometimes being in an apartment that's that's in Ottawa, and sometimes they're in Gatineau. And just the service, depending on where you work, the services that you have access to are completely different. And it is especially for families that have kids with disabilities, which is more of where the challenge is. It's a dog's breakfast of figuring out what service they can get. And so some people move to one part of the country than the other because the services for their child is
Mhm.
going to be different. Like we have not only the problem with disabilities in general, but we have, especially pediatrically, we have a tendency of funding particular disabilities more than others. And I mean, I'm autistic. All my kids, I have four kids. They're all autistic. So this is the world we live in. And if I had one that had ADHD and not autism, which actually one of them didn't get diagnosed till adult, like the funding is only, like, they could have very similar needs and challenges,
Mhm.
um, but the services are only funded if you had autism, right?
Oh wow.
That's a problem, and not every province has that sort of restriction, but we see it sort of replicated federally by all these individual strategies. And again, I mean, I'm autistic, and we've been really pushing for a national autism strategy, which is finally happening and all that stuff. But what about people with ADHD? What about people with FSD? What about people with intellectual disabilities and not autism? Like there's similar need profiles, not the same level of services, and where your postcode is really makes a difference, and it really shouldn't. That's not the
Yeah.
Canadian dream.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in British Columbia where Neil and I are. Like there's a lot of different supplements they call it. Now I know Ontario has them too, but you have to have all bunch of different conditions in order to
Yeah,
get these basic supplements that normally if you just need a vitamin supplement or you need a nutritional supplement, but you could have all these conditions,
yeah,
Yeah.
and a doctor will look at it and say, well, no, you don't have that. I go, well, can I
yeah,
Well, I
Yeah.
can't diagnose you, Brent, for something that you don't have. I go, but the worker told me to apply for all this. What?
Yeah.
What?
Oh
Oh no, I
my, I
can't.
know.
I can't give you that. I mean, I would lose my doctoral career. It would go flush
We
down the
have,
drain, right? And again, I mean, you give people the a basic standard of living and build from that point on. I mean, I know there's like we talked in that podcast earlier about basic income, but there's so many different versions of it.
yeah.
GLBI. I know that the federal government's been pushing for their version of a GLBI. Lee Kazan and I know Kim Pate, the senator, they have bills, but Lee Kazan's one just recently got turned down in the House of Commons, which is, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. But of course, they're going to go with the feds. The feds, when we know what's going on with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, so it's.
Yeah, we'll give you a basic income. We'll make it $200.
Yeah, we'll make it $200, but
I feel like the Jerry Maguire moment. Show me the money.
Show me the money. Yeah.
Show me the money.
You mean
You
there's
can't
still a
handle the
chance.
truth. I know it's a different movie, but still,
There
Tom
you
Cruise.
go. Yeah.
You
or
can't
that-
handle the truth.
For that famous line, you mean they're still saying there's still a chance. There's still a chance we can get the regulations fixed.
Yeah. We're at the end. We're at the top
It's
of
just
the
a flesh
hour.
wound.
We're at the top of the hour, Brent. I didn't know if you just a flesh wound. Yeah. I didn't know if you wanted to end the podcast as we're at the top of the hour. Do closing
Sure.
comments? Yeah.
Just ending comments. I go over to you, Maddy, first for ending comments, and then over to you, Neil, and then myself.
Okay.
Sure. One of the things that we're going to try to do in Ontario, seeing that we have 41 days left before we're barrier free, is something that we're calling the 12 days to AODA. So starting December 20th and every day, we're looking at drawing attention to the fact that we won't meet this, advocacy to push for what we need. Each day a different challenge and a different ask. So we want to push the government to make a new updated action plan and make 2030 a hard deadline with an AOD with teeth. So stay tuned.
Do you sing too on the
Oh, I
first
can
day
sing.
of
Absolutely.
AODA?
I break into song all the time. There's a song for every moment and a moment for every song.
There you go.
Yeah. On the 12th day of AODA.
Yes, I will probably do one of those. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, that sounds great. I'm looking forward to the development of the AODA. It's going to be great. I hope that it's really successful. And, Maddy, I'd love to have you back on as a, follow up from time to time. And we'll continue the journey on kind of going over how that's coming along. And, for people that are tuning in today, I hope that you really, valued today's episode. It was really informative. We covered a lot of topics regarding the Act from Ontario, the Accessibility Ontario Disability Act. I was really well informed. I mean, I learned a lot myself from it. And as an advocate, I'm always learning from my guests and other allies going forward too. And because really, we're here to try to change things and make things for the better for all of society, make it more of an inclusive environment for on so many aspects. Is it the income portion? Is it about accessibility? Is it making things more inclusive in the workplace, or buildings, hospitals, any businesses around, sidewalks, transit, you name it, we cover it. I mean, so I just want to thank you, Maddy, for that. Definitely, we just got to keep pushing up that mountain, keep pushing forward, and hold the politicians from every level of government. It doesn't matter what stripe they are. We all need to bring them all together, make it more inclusive. Is it about bridging the income assistance and disability assistance? Like in some provinces, they'll call it welfare or income assistance. Is it disability? Bridging it right across the whole country. I mean, we are citizens. I think we need to modernize, and you're bang on that, Maddy, on that. And thank you for your feedback on it, because we need to bridge it all forward in a modernized way of making bring Canadians together, not divide away from each other. Of saying,
Exactly.
Well, you need a month pass in order to leave your province. You need to have our permission to leave. Do I? Brent, do you need to go to the washroom? Yeah, can I go to the washroom, please? Well, no, don't tell me about it. Go. Okay, same thing, right? So, Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and
Yep.
we didn't really cover this too much. I mean, we talked about stigma and all that, and how a lot of it's attitudinal, right?
Mhm.
But the one of my other pet peeves, of course, in my fight for the last, 11 and a half years or whatever, is when you have tribunals tell me, I'll tell you what discrimination is, Neil. Like you have no idea. We'll tell you what discrimination is. And that just bugs me. No, but
Yeah.
anyway,
yeah, I mean,
that's a whole
Yeah.
other podcast, but I
yeah,
just wanted to
there's so
throw that
much
in there.
so much changes that need to happen. And going forward, I mean, just coming with great ideas and networking with people and saying, like, how do we change and modernize our systems going forward? I mean,
Yeah.
as a person going to be an entrepreneur, work for themselves, strengthen the ODSP, strengthen all the income assistance disability rates across our country. As a top up with the county disability benefit. I don't for me I would never want to throw all my eggs in one basket. I know some provinces have they've hoping that they're going to get things fixed. Well, I mean, FYI, 4.5 years later, they still haven't fixed it. So, I kind of
Yeah.
guess it. Like, I'm not picking on any specific provinces of saying, well, why wait until next year for it? Like, people need help now. Just before we end the podcast, a recent report just came out that states that a living income in British Columbia, for instance, in a lot of the metropolitan cities, Metro Vancouver, just for instance, I mean, on average, you're looking at on average about $26 an hour. Vancouver alone, $27.05 an hour just to meet your basic needs.
Yeah.
That means your rent, your food, your bills, your just cost of living, clothing. Now, I averaged out. Hey, here's one that's going to blow your mind, Maddie. So I averaged out the basic rate in British Columbia for PWD, a single person on PWD without opting into a bus pass, okay, which is $52. It's added onto your monthly check. If you don't want transportation, you can take the 52, and so you'll have just over $1,535. But if you don't, if you opt out of it, and you want the bus pass, you get 1483.50. So if you divide 1483.50 divided by say 40 hours a week, this don't include any breaks off, but 40 hours a week, so it's 160 hours a month. So divided, so 1483.50, everyone that one's listening here, divide it to 160 hours. It's $9.27 an hour. So the governments, the municipalities say that a living wage is $27.05. So
Yeah.
that tells me that PWD are way, 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 way below the poverty level.
Yeah.
So there's a big problem. I mean, housing affordability. We can get into a whole nother
Yeah.
podcast talk about that one. And that's
I know in Ontario, outside of Toronto, the average cost of a one bedroom apartment is $1,800 a month, which is higher than ODSP is. So that's a
yeah.
problem in it.
Well, check the income.
But like, yeah, so if you wanted to rent one of these places, almost every landlord's looking for you to have an income to a rent to income ratio of 30 to 40%, which means
Yeah.
70 to 85,000
That
just
yeah.
to get the basic in.
Yeah.
That
Totally.
is why everybody who's thinking of affordability is thinking of that, but they're not looking at us.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's one of our podcasts we're going to be doing going forward in this short next while, talking about affordability that corporate landlords are asking people, and this is kind of a dull teaser for one of the podcasts. They're asking people to have X amount of dollars in order to rent there, and you got to prove that's what
Yeah.
your income is. You got to show them this is
Yeah.
my income, and if you don't, nope, sorry, I can't
Yeah.
rent.
And that's illegal in Ontario. It's against the Human Rights Code to look at uh, income validation
It's illegal here too, but they still do
yeah,
it.
but they still do it.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
and nobody complains about it because
Mhm.
then they will never find places because you get blacklisted because
Yeah.
landlords have blacklists of there's a lot of websites that you can put your information about bad tenants in.
Mhm.
I know I was a landlord 20 years ago, so I've seen all of the aspects of things. It's a real challenge. That again, human rights are not being respected of people with disabilities primarily. I mean, it's also an effect for you have any other intersection that's even worse.
Well,
But
then
yeah,
there's another part too is I mean, you got landlords who will say, well, we don't want you living on your support portion, paying it all to rent. So what do how are you going to live on,
yeah,
based on the high market rent?
yeah,
Or if you look at a place and you say, oh, that's affordable, I think I might have to take it. How is it?
yeah.
It's great, quiet tenants, and then you find
It's
out from
got
other,
pets.
and
It's
then and
got
then you
pets.
find out
It's
from other
yeah,
previous tenants that the manager is hoping that they don't know, and then they
yeah,
tell you, no, don't move in there because that happened. Like I actually inquired about a place that's a couple doors down from where I live. The same company, just different, run by different agents. I went to go and look at it, and I was like, I was just kind of, I just had that, you usually have that, just that
yeah,
inner feeling that there's
yeah.
something not quite right here. And yeah, so I asked around, and like, yeah, you don't want to move in there because it's got mice, it's got rats, it's
Yeah.
got cockroaches, it's got bed bugs, it's got stink flies,
But
and hey,
it's rentable.
oh hey, but you know what? You want
Yeah,
it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
but don't
yeah.
worry. There's pets. It's all inclusive. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Cost
I
for
I wanted to before we sign out, I just wanted to remind people that tomorrow we have another we're just jamming the podcast together this
yeah.
week. So we have one today and one tomorrow. The one tomorrow is about the CDB, the Canada Disability Benefits. So that'll be another great one. We're going to have Joseph Vandermeer on. We haven't had him on for a while, so it'll be
Yes.
good to have him on.
Numbers guy.
Yeah, the numbers guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Maddie, Sonia and myself, we actually met Joseph in person last time we were in Ontario. It was actually very delightful to meet Joseph. And we pulled up on a bus, and he's standing out there, and a big grin on his face. We got out, and wow, he says, "You get to meet Joe in the flesh." It was great. Next time that we make our way out to Ontario, Maddie, I'd love to meet up with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. Definitely. We actually might be heading out to Ottawa in February.
Okay.
Yeah,
With,
to a rally. So
that's with
yeah,
Jeff Leggett. Yeah.
Jeff Leggett. Yeah, Sonia and myself. We're going to be going out. So yeah, it's going to be great. And holding the politicians to account best regarding the petitions. There's e-petitions out there, and
Yeah.
you see as a follow up with the
Yeah.
CDE, what's going on with that. So
Yeah. I will tell you that the government is firing on all thrusters, getting ready for the CDB to go out. They're engaging a lot of us in different aspects. I'm involved in
yeah.
the application process and whatnot. So we just need to get them to change the dollar number.
There's a lot
Yeah,
of there's a lot
And-
lot of
and-
Starfleet references there. I noticed a lot of Starfleet references there. Make it so, number one.
number one.
yes,
Resistance is futile.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, we gotta punch
All
out.
right.
As live long and prosper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you
I
very
can't do that, so I gotta.
Yeah, it's
Thank
one of the
you,
few things I
everyone,
can do with my hands still.
much. Have a great
All
day,
right.
everyone. Thanks for
Nice to meet
tuning
you.
into
Yeah.
PWD Allies podcast.